Welcome to class, another wonderful episode of Ask the Teacher. And as always, we handle your questions based on 3 points of view: scriptural truth, acceptable societal norms, and common sense. And so when we give you answers, they will be based on one of those three. And today, I don't know what we have. What question do we have today? Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you for always being this faithful to check the questions and let us have it. One of these days, we are going to show your face on camera so that people can know who is this that gives us the questions. The question today, someone asks, is heaven a real or an imaginary place? Is heaven real or is it an imaginary place? Wow. Heaven. We cannot talk about heaven without talking about hell. We cannot talk about heaven and hell without talking about the afterlife. We cannot talk about the afterlife without asking ourselves, where do people come from and where do they go? And so to answer that question, allow me to say this. Number one, human beings exist in a continuum called eternity. Before you were born, you existed in your father and your mother. Before that, you existed in your grandparents, all the way back to when life started. Whether it was a big bang or it was creation. And I usually say, if it was creation, it must have really been a big bang. It wasn't a joke having to put together all these things together. But let's agree this, that number one, man comes from the past. And whether you are looking at tradition or you are looking at other things, it is important for us to know that even in African tradition, we always had 3 levels of life: the living, the dead, and the living dead. And in every tradition and every religion, you will come to stuff about spirits and the spiritual world. So there is a life outside what we usually see. There is a life outside the physical life. And so the question of whether heaven is a real place or an imaginary place mostly is asked by people who would want to know what kind of a life they should live. And every time I have had this question, I have always said like this: I would want to talk about heaven the same way I would want to talk about corona. There was a big discussion, is corona real or is it fake? And this was my answer every time it was asked. I would better live like it is real. If it is not real, I have nothing to lose. Rather than live like it does not exist and then get killed by it. That's what I would want to say about the afterlife. Coming from the different places, number one, for every religion, every single religion has an afterlife. Every single tradition has an afterlife. The people who don't want to get involved in the afterlife discourse are people who want to live as they please, because the afterlife discourse comes with responsibility and accountability. So when somebody is told there is a heaven and you are going to give an account of your life after you are dead, people want to learn from the accountability part of their lives by convincing themselves that they are not going to give an account of their lives to anyone. But what do I have to say about heaven and hell? I have to say this. In this life, you better live like it exists. If you find it doesn't exist, you have nothing to lose. And that's what I've always said about being born again. I will live like being born again is a real experience. If I find there is no heaven, I have no problem. I'll have lost nothing. But if I live like there is no heaven, then die and find out it is there, I have everything to lose. And it is important for us to say that people who live a life that looks for an afterlife accountability live more productive, focused lives. But when you want to live like there is never going to be an accountability, your life is not focused. Beware of the lie of there is no afterlife. And yes, heaven is real according to the Christians. Afterlife is real according to every tradition and every other religion you look at. For this and other questions, write to us on 0721 899 899, whether text or WhatsApp. Is heaven real? I will live like it is. I have nothing to regret. Rather than live like it does not exist and live to regret. That's what the teacher has to say.